All right. It is Office Flash Friday. I'm Todd.
It's March 20. Not March. It's June 26th. It's June.
It feels like a different date.
All right. I'm Doug Splinter. Above me,
I'm Todd. Yeah, Todd.
Yeah, and sitting down below, joining us, special guest Brian.
Say hi, Brian.
Cowie. And
Good day.
So we just got this all like smashed together about 30 seconds before the broadcast starts. None of you care about that. What you do care about is we're going to honor some previous commitments for some advanced context-aware Power Apps embedded in Teams, right, Mr. Cowie? I promised that things have changed, and you did this demo for one of the user adoption groups, and I said, can you come do that? And you said yes, and then we had Juneteenth off, so we hope everybody had a good and reflective day last Friday. I got some security announcements, some Teams announcements, some Office 365 announcements, some Servicenow announcements. I have announcements galore. Kiddo, what do you got?
Some Microsoft money, right? That comes back. Some Power Automate, some Power BI, some Power Apps, usual suspect.
Are you saying you can get some of Microsoft's money, or is it something different?
It's something different. Money in Excel.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I just figured Microsoft money. It's just raining. Oh, okay. Somebody said this week my snark value is extremely high, and I agree with that. Probably true.
It is March 432nd, by the way. So
it is March 20-somethingth. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's roll then. I'm up first, so I'm gonna get through announcements on what I have going on first. This is kind of an in case you missed it one. That I don't think I highlighted enough. For a while, you and I have been showing the ability for people to get and do all sorts of stuff within the platform and integration with ServiceNow. But we released a whole set of integrations with ServiceNow, everything from ticketing to sending tasks from SecureScore that you can actually send over. Like if there's a task or something you need to do for your organization, you can actually route that over to ServiceNow as a to-do. Make sense?
Yeah.
So I put the tickets in. I have a whole bunch of links on IT admins and tasks and ticket integration to ServiceNow. Now, you and I have shown that over the years through the APIs, whatever it is. This is native integration. You basically just activate the ServiceNow connection, and you can be in SecureScore, and you be like, oh, that one I'm delegating over as a task for us to track and manage over in our service catalog. And again, you could have done that by pulling the API in and putting in a middle ground list. There's now direct ServiceNow integration between it. If you use something else like Sharewell or a different service catalog platform, you can still use the techniques Todd and I've shown you over the years to basically put those in a list and then through Power Automate or Logic App, fire it off. Speaking of Power Automate and Logic App, Todd and I fought a little over this announcement on top of it, right? Which I think, I don't know, probably in somewhere around episode 20 of our show, like in the early days of our show, Todd and I were sitting in St. Louis and a customer had said, you guys post all these messages into this message center, but how am I supposed to know about them if I don't have rights to that or I don't go look? And we went, huh. And it was a Thursday, and by Friday morning, we had used the REST API and Flow, and we had those things automated and coming in. Now, there's been tons of samples of them out there, but essentially you had to be a little bit of a REST nerd in order to go get those.
Yep.
And so it was, I always say in citizen developer, there's regular citizen development and there's constitutional scholar development, and there's maybe somewhere something in the middle, right? And some of the work we do, I think, Brian, you're probably going to be showing a little bit more scholarly work than the basics of what you're going to be showing today, right? But my point on this one is this is just now you can just have that connector. It's in preview, but it's the M365 Microsoft 365 Message Center connector. So you get those different things and all the messages from it, and now you can take them in through Logic Apps, through Power Automate, or through Power Apps, which I think is wonderful. Because now, we have all these rich connectors to other things, you could say when those messages come in, I want to send one over to the training group for my operations readiness for that. I want to send one up to the security team because they have to look at that one. And this one goes over to the service owner for that thing because they need it. So you can fork those messages to the different communities according to what I hope you have as your RACI framework for change, security, and operational management. And if you have all those things and it's humming along, then that's amazing. But if you need more automation and you don't like APIs, then here is just a wrappered up version of the work that's been sitting out there in GitHub for a while by various people. Okay, so that's an important one on top of the announcement. there were a ton of M365 announcements on top of it. First, I hope you were all as excited as I am about the 7x7 49-person Teams grid. Maybe not excited about the 7x7, Todd?
I'm actually distracted because I realized I forgot to update our short link, and I'm doing that. So my bad.
Oh, so people aren't joined in, or they had to go find the old show and click on the new one?
Yes. So I'm like, why do we only
well,
have
they'll find the show when it's published. A lot of people watch it lazy anyway. On top of it, so
yes, but okay. I'm back. I'm excited about the grid view. Yes, it's amazing.
Okay, so someone just said, we just got a note from someone saying, "Hey, Doug, that was the pop-up. You're who's on my interrupt list? Who said, hey, Doug, your off link is going to the wrong place."
Yeah, I just updated it. My bad.
All right. Well, we are on the air. For those who joined us late, joined us after, it'll be important to have APIs and workflows for things like this so that you consistently execute them. I told you, values. Okay. All right. What else we got going on? Recurrent surveys and teams. Awesomeness, right? Focus on you during the video meeting. So you got the video focus announcements on top of it. There is the team's personal announcements. I put a link in that one. We're mostly a business audience here, but it is interesting for what we're doing with the teams for family and friends component and all the mobile applications on top of that. This one I'm going to pause a little on. I'm just going to pause a little. Microsoft Search indexes your M365 data with graph connectors. You can add third-party stuff. Now, this has been out there, and so the documentation was announced and everything else, but they really put up the connectors tab and start talking about the third-party data sources that you get out there. And if you look at that upper left icon, Mr. Kidda, there's a couple of interesting ones in there, right? So we got the Azure Data Lake Gen 2, right? Azure SQL, obviously Servicenow, file share, straight up SQL Server, MediaWiki. And so basically the connector platforms are now out there. I'd imagine there'll be a third-party ecosystem now that we have these things out there that are coming in. So that brings it in and gets you more persistent and sticky search within it. For those of us who've been around for a long time, it's funny, Azure Search is now what it says it is, right? Azure Search searches stuff in Azure. Microsoft Search searches stuff in other places and Microsoft 365, right? So the search within Microsoft Search is that. So Azure Search searches things in Azure. All those other indexers and stuff, that intellectual property lives over here on top of this. So there's some interesting things you can do about compositing that, but it used to be there was some confusion around labeling and branding and everything else. And well, is this the Azure thing? No, it's not. This is the Microsoft search results that are included and administered from within the M365 Admin Center. So this is the SaaS service for search. All right. So some improvements over there, which I was pretty happy about.
Great.
On top of it, the other one they had is PowerPoint Presenter Coach went for Android mobile. Did you see that?
Well, no, I didn't know that's where you're going to go. I did not see that for Android mobile. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so if you have not used Presenter Coach, you should.
Good. So good.
It's really good. It's kind of humbling to use it when you first realize the number of bad behaviors that you have.
It's like the coach you wish you had for everything. It's like, yeah, stop saying
Yeah. Do we really need to stop saying
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Watching, I got over the majority of that, like watching myself when after this show. Because after a whole bunch of episodes of screwing things up, I'm like, oh, that's what I sound like? Okay, I'll just deal with it, right? So the on top of it. All right.
Yeah.
Yammer, one of the first apps truly to release based on the Fluid framework from the whole thing. So you're seeing that over in the Yammer redesigned is now in public preview for the UI. On top of it, there's a bunch of little stuff that came out for breakout rooms and teams and all sorts of stuff, but let's not forget our email, which is the ability to create and do polls directly within email. So we have that one. I liked the Visio diagrams in Excel. I don't know if you saw that announcement from a personal productivity standpoint. You get the database diagrams more easily in Visio for the web. And Visio for the web got one of my favorite cool little features that you can save. You can go in and download it as an image. So if you have a Visio up there, you can just quickly turn it into a PNG that you can go embed somewhere in a blog post or anything else. So there's some pretty cool stuff that happened around the usability side on top of that. The Safe Documents service got integrated in it. Edge now has some options for how you do the synchronization of settings and what you synchronize on top of that. Microsoft Graph got some new privacy settings. Unfortunately, the image on here is not that. It's the same from the Azure search image, so this blog post needs to be corrected, but it doesn't matter. The Graph has new privacy settings, and as you look at the consent framework and the privacy controls around the Graph, it's important that we have that. Some new stuff on Microsoft Group Management, and you're going to cover money in Excel, which is down there, and on top of it. So a huge roundup of stuff on top of it. I did want to point out one of those things, which is PowerPoint Live, which is in a little subpoint, was generally available. So PowerPoint Live is really cool. If you have not seen this one, it is essentially, remember the old presentation translator service that was out there for a while, where you had this third-party service and you could put the add-in in and it put a QR code in your presentation? Well, they took that along with a little bit of the old Pulse-style feedback, the presentation translator, and turned it into a cloud service. So you can essentially toss your presentations out to the web. People get a QR code to join it. They can do a little thumbs up, thumbs down, love, frowny face type feedback stream that comes across. You can pick your language at the bottom for whatever language you want to listen to the presentation in. And so you get this pretty cool thing. You activate that presentation live directly from within the PowerPoint.
For the web.
So for the web, sorry, yes, point. And I spend a lot of time in PowerPoint for the web now, so it's my predominant viewer as I find them and search them and get links shared around. So anyway, so there you go. There's the one on top of that one. I got just a couple more that are super important on top of it. We announced some extensions to Defender ATP. So it used to be Windows Defender ATP, right? And there is still a Windows Defender ATP, but we changed the branding to Microsoft Defender ATP when we started releasing clients for other platforms, like the Defender ATP client for Mac. Well, now we have the Defender ATP client for Linux just became generally available on top of it for doing signal integration on top of that. And we also announced the public preview of Defender ATP for Android. So now you have those web protection for anti-phishing, blocking unsafe connection, custom indicators, malware scanning. Because as we all know, bad software is coming in through what are perceived as trusted channels now, through embedded components, bad open source libraries, all these embedding. Unless you really have an amazingly secure development lifecycle, the software stores are not as secure as we all would wish they were, right? And I think that's been proven time and time again. And plus now on certain platforms, there are multiple stores you can get things from. So it's not just like the one curated store, but over at Android, you can get things from different stores.
Right.
So it's just an example. If you're a Samsung user, you have the Samsung store, right? And then you also have the Google Play Store. So those kind of things result in a collision of software on your device. And so this is a whole new way you're installing the bad stuff because you think it's something legit. Now, as soon as it's found out to be bad, the stores are pretty good at, curating and removing, but for that window of time, right? That stuff is in there. So that level of defense is important for these platforms, and you have it. Also, the sensitive data blocking by integrating with Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So it gives you that unified SecOps experience on top of it. So you get that whole alert from directly inside of the Microsoft Defender Security Center. And so now you have this nice composited security workflow. All right, those are my big ones for the week, which I know was a lot. So I'm going to pop over Mr. Kidda and turn it over to you. And since we are going to do this demo, just a heads up, even though people may have only be watching it on the recorded, we're probably going to run a little long as we let Brian do the demo, because I really do want that one shown as we roll through.
Perfect.
So Mr. Kidda, I am going to change spotlight focus over to you.
Lovely.
So hopefully I clean that up and you should be good to go.
Perfect. So, and after I did change the link, I noticed some more people started trickling in. But so yeah, we'll
all right.
I haven't
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. All right. So
it happens.
Money in Excel. I thought this one was great because I think money is one of those. I mean, let's just face it. It's one of those Microsoft products that is no longer around. But the people that used it really loved it. I think there's a lot of things that fall in that category from a Microsoft perspective. Windows Phone, maybe, I don't know. Clippy. No one loved Clippy. Nobody loved Clippy. Money in Excel. I actually set this up and I was pretty impressed with it. I'm going to keep at it. It's still a little early. For example, I wasn't able to add some of my accounts with MFA on it yet. So there's still some things that need to get addressed and fixed. But this is pretty slick. So it's really easy to get in and start adding your accounts and categorizing your transactions. And there's some templates in there as well around like net worth and things like that you can do. And it just makes sense to be in Excel, to be honest. Because I mean, is there any more of an Excel thing than like tracking transactions and finances and things like that from a personal perspective? And I kind of coupled this honestly with the OneDrive Personal Vault. So I hadn't used that before, but I'm like, hey, this is, if there's something that I should put in my vault, it's this. So I get an MFA prompt every time I want to open this up. So for extra security. So yeah, pretty cool. I would check this out. It's really easy to get started. It's just an Excel add-in that kind of goes over here and works with it and puts it all in an Excel sheet. So I don't know. Have you given this a try yet, Doug or Brian?
I have not.
Yeah, I think it's worth checking out. So really easy right here. So Microsoft Personal or Family subscribers, which I highly recommend. All right. So a couple things from a Power Automate perspective. I think this one makes just a ton of sense. Putting the AI Builder actions into Power Automate. So things that are both out of the box, like text analytics and things like that, and OCR, but also even using your own models that you've built inside of there. So if you're doing AI Builder and you're building your own models and you're training your own models, this is just a natural extension of the work that you're already doing inside of AI Builder. So this is really cool. So Brian, have you worked with? I heard you perk up. Have you been working with AI Builder at all?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, so now to have your flow in part of a solution for the predict action, or for the AI Builder ones, right? Like the old predict action that was up there. Yep.
So no, that's a good call out. So this is so Jeff, definitely check this out. I think this is a good add to this. This was really quick. So we announced, I think, was it last month? We announced the Softomotive acquisition, and we're already putting in the Win Automation action into flows.
That's what I call quick dev, man. That
was really fast. So so this is just more capability inside of the UI flows. Softomotive have been doing RPA style, Windows automation for a decade and a half, and now that rich capability instead of IP is available inside of UI flows. So obviously it's preview, but that was really, really fast. So check that out. And on top of that, one of the things that we added, so first I'll call out, we added UI flows. We always like to call out to our GCC and GCC High friends. So UI flows are now available. That was not too long. That wasn't too long of a lead time, I think, to get that over to GCC. So you're welcome for that. And then in addition to building on top of the Win Automation stuff that we just talked about, having retry and timeout policies available now inside of your UI flows. So things that are, because I mean, let's be honest, doing this UI automation can be pretty brittle sometimes, and not always getting the same behavior each time. So if you have a step that's brittle or that may time out or take a long time, you can go ahead and set up a policy that makes sense based on what you're trying to do. So
yeah, maybe it has a backend service it's talking to with variable performance or something else, and you can basically say, just kind of chill until that prompt.
Yeah, some of these apps are not necessarily modern, right? So they could be performance could be poor. A couple new connectors that I'm going to call out. IoT Central, that's pretty great. So this is for Power Automate. I also want to call out, Doug already called out the M365 Message Center. That's awesome. Office 365 Group Mail. I think this one is actually really cool. It applies to some of the flows that I have where are sitting on top of someone's personal mailbox. So if you're able to delegate some of those emails to go to an Office 365 group, mailbox, then you can now Power Automate on top of that. So I think this is a great add on top of some of these other ones from third parties. This one so now switching gears over to Power Apps. This one makes a lot of sense. I think this one has been a oft requested capability where if you have a connector, and they call out Azure DevOps as one of the examples where the schema that's returned from that connector is dependent upon maybe parameters that are being passed, you're going to get a different set of schema or a different set of fields. Power Apps now has the ability to adapt to that and have a dynamic schema. So this is in preview. So if you've been hindered by that, where one of your connectors returns a different type of schema based on what you're doing with it, definitely check this out and test your apps and see how this is going to be useful. And as always, the team is taking feedback on this. So this is a really great maturity feature here. Couple more really quick, and then we want to get to Brian's demo. But this one is super cool. So being able to debug your published Power App and actually get a view into what's happening in a debug view. So this is really, I think we've been building towards this. Power Apps becoming, like you said, as from citizen developer to scholarly development, a constitutional scholar. Some of these features are features that pro devs rely upon day in and day out to troubleshoot their applications, to see what's happening, setting breakpoints, things like that. So this is giving you a nice view of actually what's happening in your application step by step, so that you can troubleshoot performance, troubleshoot maybe a hard to find bug, rather than just observing the behavior in your application. So this is a really slick capability to be able to debug and look at the results from all of your applications. You can see an example here of getting like a 400 from one of your HTTP calls, something like that, and saying, okay, that's that's an error on my API side. So really, really cool stuff. All right, switching gears now to Power BI. One of the big things in this post, I'll just kind of sum this up really quickly, is we're going to be releasing templates inside of Azure for Power BI Report Server. So if you use Power BI Report Server, you kind of know the use cases already. For things like paginated reports and things like that. Which also, not only are we going to be releasing these templates, which makes it easy to operationalize and productionalize, but this affects from a licensing perspective. So giving you some more options on how to potentially license how you're using Power BI Report Server. So if this is relevant to you, you probably already know. Definitely take a look at this, and hopefully we're bringing some more flexibility and options to people that are running reports.
That's very interesting because of the hybrid benefit allowance, right? I mean, that's very interesting from multiple layers.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we did this. I think having the ability to do Power BI Report Server is an important option for customers for a lot of reasons that either aren't ready to go to the cloud or that need a specific capability or just fits their specific use case. And then bringing more flexibility on top of that from a deployment perspective inside of Azure, providing these templates, and then giving you flexibility from a licensing perspective. So I think more flexibility is good. If this fits you, then that's awesome. And I hope that you get some value out of it. All right, last thing here, real quick hit. New way of getting apps, kind of combining the organizational applications and the template applications that have been an app source into a unified view here and being able to filter that. So if you're inside of Power BI and you're looking at doing discovery, looking at discovery around looking for those apps, then this should be a welcome view for you. So that's pretty cool. So that's all I got. We're going to hand it over to Brian, I think. And Brian, take it away.
Very good.
All right.
Got it flipped over there, Doug?
Yeah, it's live as of now.
All right. So one of the reasons why you guys asked me to come on, so I was very inspired, I'll just say, right, from your guys' introduction for starting to actually utilize parameters coming in from teams, especially from a project management sort of perspective. And through a lot of the different customers that I've been engaged with, they're obviously looking for different ways to be able to do it. So I'm taking that similar sort of realm, but I'm trying to also mash it up across a bunch of different data sources and provide almost kind of self-configuration
Nice.
inside of the tool in and of itself. So just as a blank slate here, the application itself, I actually have kind of a loading screen to basically check to see if the application or the channel that the application is going to be loaded into already has all of the necessary configurations inside of initially like a SharePoint list. So it's going to be pulling information from a projects list and being able to capture, right, what team association, what channel association. Additionally, I'm also hooking it up to an account inside of CDS to be able to show relevant information. Like as a project member, a lot of the times, if you need to, I don't know, go visit a client, at times, making sure that you know the appropriate location to go and see them, especially if you're getting onboarded for the first time, seeing some of that stuff. So storing that all occasionally here as well. And then I had to have a little bit of additional fun and do like some timesheet management stuff on top of that as well. So I have a bunch of different things going on here, but I think the first thing that I wanted to show was pulling in a lot of the same kind of deals for the prime. Now, one of the methods that I normally chose to work through is to actually have and set all of the different parameters inside of an individual variable itself. So you can reference them holistically. And what I'm also doing here is being able to set the visibility of the theme, right? So that's one of the examples that we have out on Docs is being able to, if you're running in the high contrast mode versus the dark mode versus the normal mode, right? Having your app conform to that actual mode.
So
and
you're
then
actually
looking
getting,
up a bunch of stuff
showing us
and everything.
you're showing us how to pull that data in properly and also how to make our app look nice.
Sure. Well, nice is a relative term,
All right,
especially for this. But so let's
thematically matched, right? So
yeah.
All right.
Exactly, right. So let's just say, right, I'm inside of Teams, I have my Contoso environment, and I basically have an assembly and an electronics project that basically spun up. I basically published the application to Teams, right, made sure that that was a Teams-aware application. So now if I load my project information app, it's going to look to verify if it can actually find the relative information inside of that SharePoint list. If it does, it redirects to the top section here is all the initial information inside of SharePoint. And then the secondary piece is actually the stuff inside of CDS that is directly tied to that image. Now, you can also see there's a bunch of additional information directly inside here, such as we had list our individual project members, but what if I actually wanted to, I've never met them before, right? I need to actually see who these people are. Additionally, if I want to get additional information on them, I did decide to, throw a nice little bullet here to go out to their Delve profile. In general, right, if I needed to find information that was directly related to them, just from a URL schema that you can basically do, but you could add additional components in there, such as doing a direct chat to an individual or whatever it is. If I come back to the actual, main application as well, I figured, why not also be able to add like submitting a timesheet details? Because especially from a project management perspective, time is important, and also understanding the burn down of a particular project is even more so. So what I decided is I have another screen in here that I'm contextually sending the project code to a set of tiles that I have a dashboard set in Power BI. All of this information feeding from Azure SQL from a database there that I can actually push that information through my new timesheet submission to be able to show me, right, how much budget was initially there directly coming from the SharePoint list, showing the hours used coming from the Azure SQL database, and then the burned out remaining amount, right, based off of calculations that I can do inside of Power BI. So being able to have this and then contextually setting those filter parameters on the tiles themselves, so that if I'm in electronics, right, I see that associated information. If I go to my assembly project, so this should be able to find the assembly information, load over into that one. right? So this is now my audit as opposed to my wiring project with a different budget. If I go to my project burn down here, we should be able to see the 1,000 budget there, a little bit less time, just a little bit less used from that perspective. But I think what's even, I'll say, funner or geekier about this whole piece was also the fact that what I did is I decided to say, well, what if I wanted to be able to reuse this in a way that said, this is a Office Friday basically channel itself, right? I'm just going to create that as an individual channel. Nothing special here from a Teams perspective. But if I now go ahead and decide to add the project information tab, right? Or at the end of the day, this application inside of here, what this will do is it's not going to find a match inside that project information list and go to basically new form for me to basically enter in my information directly, as well as be able to find the associated, CRM account, right? So if I go ahead here and say OFF is awesome, right? My budget is going to be $5,000 because that's all good and fun. We're going to, do our traditional kind of, let's find some people, so we got Alicia inside of there. We'll just put her as at least the only team member. And then we're going to be able to link that right to any kind of an account, right? So let's just say there. When I go ahead and set that pushes that one over to the share list, the direct association inside of here. If I refresh over here, that's also going on. I also decided for funsies, even though this wouldn't be realistic for a production scenario, is when I add additional information inside of my project, I'm going to force a data set refresh on my Power BI dashboard so that I can also update information for my budget and all of that kind of stuff so it didn't associatively break. But right, so all of this kind of stuff going on there, just to also you the contextual pieces. If I go inside of here and say, yep, I'm changing over to dark mode, and if I go into my electronics project again, launch this, now you can see the background and foreground basically changing, and I'm leveraging that theme variable for foreground and background everywhere inside of my application. And then conversely, if I decided to go really harsh with my good high contrast mode, and we'll even just go back over to our good OFF, we see it's black and white, and I don't have, like the fun yellows and whatever, but once again, it's redirecting to that associated information directly in here. And once again, if I needed to, right, create a new timesheet from this, auto-populating my name, I can't change that. It's auto-populating to the first Monday of this week based off of, who I am, automatically defaults it to that project. So if I needed to, right, once again, say, yep, 24 hours because, this was hard, and then saving that automatically pushes at least to that Azure SQL DB. I'm not forcing it to refresh at least after there, but if I wanted to, coming over into SQL, right, I could be able to say, sure, come over to my timesheet details area, and it's basically going to be inside of here as well as an additional kind of timesheet master, at least in place, right? So a bunch of information in general that you can basically have directly inside.
Very cool.
Comments, cares, concerns?
So here's the lesson. You took the simple example we had from a parameter standpoint. And remember when I said constitutional scholar level, right? So, but you did it properly over in the tool. So if you go back into the authoring, if you would, for the actual Power App, where you basically had that initialization where you said, hey, look, here's the proper way to go about setting that stuff. Now you have all these contextual things available, and then you use them in every app, every window, and the Power BI embedded tiles in order to feed those things in and make it component. You auto-detected whether there was a project code, and if there's not, you let someone essentially link it to a project and a customer right there. So the app self-provisions and then retains the context because of those variables that were linked in. And I was just like, yeah, I saw it, and I'm like, that is just really a great way to handle. Because Todd and I were like, oh, you could auto provision these things that come in, but some people are like, yeah, but what if I suddenly this turns into a project and I need to link it in? And I saw your example, I'm like, that's really slick.
That's really smart.
And I mean, you're using the techniques like for the can you show the form for the Power BI, like how you're injecting that into the Power BI?
Oh yeah.
Because I think people get the idea of looking it up on the list and doing the parameter. Yep.
Yeah, so the biggest thing here I basically have my individual tile base areas, and then I'm basically appending the actual filter based off of the project ID at the end of it, right?
Right.
So at the end, it's doing this on visible, at least inside the screen, so that it automatically just pushes that through. Now, obviously, there's variations and inconsistencies as far as what you can pass as filters through Power BI embed and all of that kind of stuff in general. But for a simple example like this, it actually works extremely well.
Yeah. All right. Well, so there we go. We have a much more sophisticated example of the skunkworks thing that Todd and I showed when we first saw that context variable. And Brian's doing a little more authoritative. We were basically grabbing the vanity name, but you've been using the authoritative ID on top of it. We also played around with another customer. I played around with actually extending the graph information about the group and then using the Azure AD connector to fetch that back. But I think that's probably not necessary, but it is kind of interesting to have maybe the project codes, whatever, sort of tattooed to the group as well, so that you're not constantly having to run to a SQL table to go fetch that data. But I don't know if it's 6 of 1. If you have a master model where you're like, we're going to link group IDs to project codes in this manner. But you think about it, if you had that little lookup and that data dip that you could do, you could then use this with any connector, any Power BI service, any external SaaS application. I think it's just the technique's extremely powerful. And this is where I say it is the understanding. This scenario is pretty advanced, but the technique itself really is more in the, I don't know, somebody who's interested in politics as opposed to just a regular citizen, if we're on the scale of development. Like, I think there's a lot to be learned here that anyone can use to make things contextually available if you're willing to store and link the ID or an attribute of the group. And so I loved this, and that's why I wanted to take a few extra minutes and let people share.
This is awesome.
I particularly enjoyed that. I didn't find one, so I'm going to help you fix that. You know what I mean? Like, that was the.
That was my favorite. I'll be honest. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's like there's not one, but there could be, right?
I think this also shows going the extra. I won't even say mile. Going the extra 10 feet for accessibility, right? So you use the high contrast setting appropriately to make sure that people that need that feature have it available. I love that.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And that wasn't difficult to do.
But obviously, it takes rigor. Right. I mean, it takes rigor to make sure, right, for all your properties and cards. But at the end of the day, if you're being able to still use a similar or a streamless kind of variable, right, a variable that was always consistent for my foreground, my background, but you could add additional things, right, such as like icon color, hover color, like you could do all of those things individually and set it once as your main theme. Right. And honestly, been doing that for a while, just not in the context of teams. Right? Yep. Being able to say, if I need to change this from a theme perspective, if I need to brand it, right, with a partner or an organization, right, that I could pass that information through and just have that set as a general variable. So, yeah.
Oh, nicely done. That's great.
Yeah. You combine this with the Teams auth announcements we had for seamless authentication, the application approvals that we've done and everything. And this is where I say Teams becoming a serious application platform, and we're just seeing a massive surge in both internal and external development. And these kind of things are where you can weave that last mile, in my opinion, together to solve for your unique business context across these different scenarios. So that was it for an extended bad late start, late misdated March/June Office Flash Friday. We'll be back, and it will be July by the time.
It'll be in July. Wow, my God.
It'll be July, which is crazy. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I got nothing else. So everybody have a great and safe weekend wherever you are. That's an Office Flash Friday for March, June 26th.
Peace, everybody.
Take care, y'all.